Now, we are going to see about the next topic that is called buyback of shares. Okay. So, what is buyback? It is just the opposite of issue of shares. In issue of shares, you issue shares to the public and collect the money. But here, what happens in buyback? You collect the shares back from the public. So, buyback is just the opposite of IPO. Initial public offer, you issue shares to the public, whereas in buyback, you get back the shares from the public. So what is buyback? Buyback is called reacquisition by a company of its own securities. Okay, so the securities are bought back by the company itself. That is called buyback. Now, what is this method? It's a method of returning money to the investors. Okay, so what is this? It's reacquisition by a company of its own securities, and it's a way of returning money to the investors. Now, next, we are going to see why a company should consider a buyback. Now, globally, there are two ways that a company can buy back the shares. Okay, so there are two ways globally, but out of it, only one way is being adopted in India. What is the first way? To buy back the shares and hold the share as a treasury stock in the balance sheet of the company. What does it mean? The company will buy back the shares, but it will, after buying back the shares, it will hold as a stock, treasury stock in the balance sheet of the company. This will be used by the company for the treasury operations. Now, second method, buy back the shares from the market and thereafter extinguish the shares. Cancel the shares completely and reducing the outstanding shares. Now, in the first method, you buy back the shares, but you are holding the shares as a stock in the balance sheet of the company. Now, second method, what is that? You buy back the shares, however, you extinguish the shares and reduce the outstanding shares to that extent. Now, in India, we don't follow this method. We follow the second method only. What do we do? We buy back the shares, however, it is being extinguished after buyback. Okay, so the second method is being followed in India. Now, why should a company buy back the shares? Let us understand it in detail. There are companies which has lot of cash balance, but they have very few projects to invest. Okay. Now, typical example of this is the Indian IT companies. Indian IT companies are service-based companies, meaning they don't spend much on research and development. So what do? They don't spend much on research and development. So which kind of companies spend much on R&D? Product-based companies. So Indian IT companies are service-based. They don't spend much on R&D. Because they don't spend much on R&D, what is the end result? They sit on huge cash balance. So what happens to the cash balance? It's huge, to the tune of billions of dollars. Now, had it been a product company, the huge cash balance would have been invested in R&D. But since this is a service-based IT companies, so what happens to the cash balance? It remains idle. Now, so what happens to this cash balance? It is in the bank. So it is better if it is being returned to the shareholders because they don't have any other choice of redeploying it. Now, what do they say? Because there is so much cash in the books and there is few investment opportunities, it is better to buy back. So what is this? So the IT companies are operating on matured business models. There is not much to invest in terms of new product. They have so much cash in the books, and therefore very little investment opportunities. Therefore, it is better to go for buyback. Now, what are have any Indian IT companies done buyback? Yes. Typically speaking, TCS has done buyback. Infosys has done a lot of buybacks. So these are all companies which are doing buyback consistently. And these are all companies which have huge cash balance.